If you feel constantly tired, financially stressed, and unable to focus, you're not imagining it. Across countries, cultures, and age groups, millions of people report the same strange feeling. Low energy, rising anxiety, shrinking savings, and a mind that can't stay still for more than a few seconds. This didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen by accident. In the past decade, global surveys from organizations like the World Health Organization and Gallup have shown record levels of burnout, chronic stress, and mental fatigue. Productivity tools increased, yet people feel less productive. Technology promised freedom, yet attention spans are collapsing. Something is clearly off. Let's start with the most obvious symptom: exhaustion. People today sleep less than previous generations, not because they choose to, but because work, screens, and stress have invaded the night. Artificial light disrupts melatonin. Notifications fragment rest. Irregular work hours confuse the body's internal clock. The result is widespread sleep debt, a scientifically recognized condition where the body never fully recovers. And when sleep collapses, everything follows. Decision-making worsens. Impulse control weakens. Motivation drops. Now add money to the picture. Wages in many countries have failed to keep up with the real cost of living. Housing, education, healthcare, and food prices have risen faster than income. This isn't speculation. It's documented in economic data worldwide. So people work longer hours, take on more debt, and live with constant financial pressure. Stress hormones like cortisol stay elevated for months, sometimes years, and a brain under chronic stress does not think clearly. It reacts, it scrolls. It escapes, which brings us to distraction. The average person now checks their phone dozens of times an hour. Social platforms are engineered around variable rewards, a concept borrowed directly from behavioral psychology. Unpredictable likes, notifications, and updates trigger dopamine spikes, training the brain to seek constant stimulation. Over time, deep focus becomes harder. Boredom feels unbearable. Silence feels uncomfortable. This combination of poor sleep, financial stress, and engineered distraction creates a perfect storm. A population that is awake but exhausted, connected but scattered, busy but stuck. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Systems don't need to control people who are rested, focused, and financially secure. They run most smoothly when people are overwhelmed, distracted, and just trying to survive the week. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's an observable pattern. To understand how this became normal, we have to look at timing. Around the early 2000s, three major shifts happened at once. Work moved from physical spaces into digital ones. The internet went from optional to unavoidable, and economic pressure intensified after repeated global financial shocks. Jobs stopped being 9 to 5 and became always on. Emails, messages, and deadlines followed people home. Research from labor economists shows average working hours didn't just increase, they became fragmented. The brain never fully disconnects when work can appear at any moment. At the same time, smartphones placed the entire internet in people's pockets. What began as a tool for efficiency quickly became a constant cognitive load. Studies in neuroscience show that frequent task switching reduces working memory and increases mental fatigue, even if total work hours stay the same. Meanwhile, household debt expanded rapidly in many economies. Credit cards, student loans, and rising rents locked people into long-term financial obligations. When survival depends on the next paycheck, risk-taking drops, creativity shrinks, and stress becomes chronic. None of these forces alone would be enough to overwhelm an entire population. But together, they reinforced each other. More stress reduced focus, less focus reduced performance. Lower performance increased insecurity. And insecurity drove people deeper into the very systems draining them. This is how pressure becomes permanent. And once pressure is permanent, exhaustion stops feeling like a warning sign and starts feeling normal. Attention didn't just become distracted, it became valuable. In the modern economy, attention is bought, sold, measured, and optimized. Advertising once competed for minutes. Now it competes for seconds. Major technology platforms generate revenue by keeping users engaged for as long as possible, because time on screen directly translates into profit. This is not hidden. It's stated clearly in corporate filings and business models. To do this, platforms rely on well-documented principles from behavioral science. Variable reward schedules, the same mechanism studied in psychology labs decades ago, keep people checking again and again. You don't know when the next notification will arrive, or what it will contain, and that uncertainty keeps the brain alert. Neuroscientists have shown that repeated exposure to rapid, high-stimulation content raises the brain's baseline level of arousal. Over time, slower activities feel dull. Reading feels harder, thinking feels heavier. The brain adapts to speed. This isn't about weak willpower, it's about environment. When every spare moment is filled with optimized stimuli, the mind never enters true rest. Even downtime becomes consumption. And when attention is constantly pulled outward, self-reflection shrinks. Goals blur, long-term thinking fades. People feel busy all day, yet struggle to remember what they actually did. Distraction in this system is not a flaw, it's the product. Feeling broke isn't only about what's in your bank account. It's also about how your brain experiences scarcity. Behavioral economists have shown that when people live under constant financial pressure, the mind narrows. This is called the scarcity effect. When money feels tight, mental bandwidth shrinks. Planning for the future becomes harder. Small expenses feel overwhelming. Even when income rises, the stress doesn't immediately disappear, because the brain has adapted to survival mode. At the same time, modern consumer culture pushes constant comparison. Social media exposes people to curated lifestyles, luxury, and success stories at a scale never seen before. Research consistently shows that frequent upward comparison increases dissatisfaction, even when people's real conditions haven't changed. So people feel behind, even when they're stable. They feel poor, even when their needs are met. This emotional pressure feeds impulsive spending, short-term comfort purchases, and cycles of debt. Relief now feels more urgent than security later. Motivation suffers too. When effort no longer feels connected to reward, the brain disengages. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. You work harder, but life doesn't feel easier. So energy drops, ambition fades, fatigue deepens. This is how financial stress becomes psychological exhaustion, and psychological exhaustion feeds back into financial struggle. The acceleration is tied to technology, global events, and societal change. In the last 10 to 15 years, smartphones became ubiquitous. Algorithms perfected engagement. Work became remote and flexible, but also endless. Global crises, financial crashes, pandemics, and geopolitical tensions added unpredictability to everyday life. Each event amplified stress, fragmented routines, and disrupted sleep patterns. Researchers studying modern burnout call it a perfect storm. Every stressor compounds the others. Lack of sleep weakens focus. Financial insecurity increases anxiety. Constant distraction prevents deep rest. Together, these factors create a feedback loop that keeps people stuck in exhaustion, indecision, and distraction. Even productivity tools and self-help trends often backfire. They promise control, but add more notifications, more tracking, more mental clutter. Instead of regaining energy, people become hyper-aware of their fatigue, anxiety, and lack of progress. This is why it feels personal, even though it's systemic. It's not that individuals are failing. The environment is designed, through culture, technology, and economy, to keep energy low and attention scattered. Awareness is the first step toward change. Understanding that your tiredness, distraction, and financial stress are not personal failings shifts perspective. Scientists and psychologists emphasize that environmental design shapes behavior far more than willpower alone. Sleep hygiene, digital boundaries, and structured routines are no longer optional. They are necessary defenses. Small, deliberate changes can break the cycle. Limiting notifications, creating focused work blocks, and scheduling rest allow the brain to recover. Financial clarity, like budgeting and automated savings, reduces the constant cognitive load of money stress. Mindful attention practices, even for a few minutes a day, train the brain to resist constant distraction. None of this is a quick fix. Systems are powerful, but consistent action rewires habits, restores energy, and rebuilds attention. What feels normal, tired, broke, scattered, can become the exception rather than the rule. The patterns are real, the pressures are systemic, and the solutions are practical. Recognizing the forces at work is the first step to reclaiming control over your mind, your body, and your life.